A very warm welcome to all our participants who are joining for the second PIM monthly montage for the year 2022, which is dedicated to the crucial topic of the importance of I'm Tandu, your host for this evening, senior lecturer attached to the Postgraduate Institute of Management. And it is an extreme honor to introduce the two panelists of today. I will start with Ms. Tilanka Abewardena. Ms. Tilanka Abewardena currently serves as the president of Sri Lanka Institute of Marketing. She is also the Chief Marketing and Business Operations Lead for the Southeast Asian and emerging markets at Microsoft. Ms. Tilanka Abewardena is an international marketing professional with 15 years of experience in strategic marketing management, with geographic exposure ranging from Sri Lanka, UAE to emerging Asian markets. She is currently the CMO lead for Southeast Asia emerging markets at the Fortune 500 company Microsoft, leading marketing and communications across 9 different Asian countries, including Bangladesh, Bhutan, Brunei, Cambodia, Laos, Maldives, Myanmar, Nepal, and Sri Lanka. Tilanka also holds multiple marketing awards under her belt for the work in Sri Lanka and Myanmar, including FE, PR Awards Asia, Brand Excellence, and Manthan Awards. She was also recognized by Women in Management and International Finance Corporation, a part of the World Bank Group, at the 6th Professional and Career Women Awards for Leadership Excellence in Marketing in 2016. Tilanka, it's an absolute pleasure to have you with us today. Next,
likewise.
I would also like to introduce someone who is not an unusual or unfamiliar face for the students of PIM and the alumni members of PIM. Somebody who has rendered an yeoman service for PIM as a member of the Tilaka, who is the head of compliance at LOLC Finance PLC, and an experienced head of compliance with a demonstrated history of working in the financial services industry, skilled in management, training, business communications, business strategy, and regulatory compliance. And also he is an extremely value-adding member of the PIM faculty, and himself being an alumni member of the Postgraduate Institute of Management. Mr. Jitendra Tilaka, absolute honor and a pleasure to have you in the panel of the PIM monthly montage as well.
Pleasure to be with you and Tilanka and the esteemed audience in this particular webinar.
All right. So I would like to proceed with the monthly montage session now, and it's extremely encouraging to see the enthusiasm. Some participants have already sent the questions beforehand. Some participants had actually sent the questions beforehand as well. And the first question would be directed at Ms. Tilanka. Ms. Tilanka, now as a leader in the corporate world, how important is communication to you? And how do you see communication skills affecting your performance as a leader? Let's start with that.
Okay. I hope you can hear me well and clear.
Yeah, we can hear you well.
Okay. Okay, great. So once again, thank you, Tarindu, and the team PIM for the invitation. And it's a pleasure to be in this panel with Mr. Jitendra. So thank you for that. So coming back to your question, so you asked as a leader how important communication is. So I think the moment that I saw your question, one word came to my mind. You know, I mean, I can say a lot of things, but I think particularly one word came to my mind. I think it's clarity. It's about clarity, you know, because I think there can be fantastic strategies, you know, 5-year plans or whatever the number of plans, and you can get consultants and, you know, do whatever in your organizations. But as a leader, if you cannot create clarity, which actually happens through communication, mostly, I mean, communication, you can't say it's not only communication. There's a lot of work that leads up to it. But after all of that, if you cannot really create clarity for your team, I think you'll fail, basically, simply put. Because personally, I really believe that any strategy which is so good, that's why they say, the culture eats strategy for breakfast. So unless you have a proper culture, the strategy fails. Similarly, you can have a beautiful strategy document, but unless you operationalize it, people won't know. Only the leaders would know. So I think in this whole exercise, when it comes to the communication as a leader, I think the word that you might hear me say again and again today would be clarity. So as a leader, I think creating clarity, what you're trying to achieve, creating clarity, what your organization expects from your employees, creating clarity, what success looks like. So I think it's all about making the right communication and creating clarity. So I think this being the first question, I hope I answered you. So for a business leader, what communication means really is creating clarity for the team.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think you were very much spot on with that. How being clear in what you say and being clear in what people tell you, how important it is for you and how it matters to you. I think you definitely, Tilanka, thank you very much. Moving on to Mr. Jitendra Gunatilaka, leadership team member at a leading organization such as LOC. When you are listening to a presentation from, let's say, a member of the organization, what are the fundamentals of communication that you would observe, and what do you feel is the difference between any other average presentation versus a presentation that definitely sticks in your mind?
Yes, Tarandu, when you're listening to a presentation in a management context, in an organization, it can be public or private, right? First of all, we need to understand what is a presentation, right? In the good old days, Tilanka probably would have been part of it. We didn't have PowerPoint. It was only OHPs, the overhead projector, as it is, what we call it, right? So that was supported the verbal communication. So if I may simplify it, we had a verbal channel and a visual channel, right? So if I'm looking at a presentation, the speaker will be there, plus his speech will be supported by visual content, right? So I think what most people get it wrong is they think it is the slides or the PowerPoint slides that will do the talking, right? So what they don't realize is it is their speech and the slides both together should be there. So to answer your question in a very short way, I would say, if I'm looking at a presentation, I would like to see a blended input to the audience. It can be a boardroom with board of chairman and the board of directors. It can be your management team, senior management team, or it can be your team, right? It can be the production, sales, or whatever, right? Or if you're in academia, I think most of the participants, I feel, have the PIM background, right? If you're presenting a case, if you're presenting a lecture to your learning partners, you need to deliver with the support of the visual aids. So that is one component which most of the people miss out. And if I may quote the first opening line of your communication most wanted, right? I've been enabling, I've been repeating this, that I'm not a teacher, I'm not a lecturer, I'm not a trainer, but I only enable people in business communication. And in communication, I've been telling however much you are qualified, right? However much you have experience. If you are not a communicator, you might be a failure, right? Because you need to communicate the knowledge and experience and the skills that you have to your audience, right? So few skills which I've been talking, which have been enabling people is like A, B, C, D, E. A, they should be automation savvy, right? In this VUCA world, it is automation that helps you to survive. We know how since March 2020, businesses survived and prospered thanks to technology. Second, we need to balance conflicting needs. Third, C is nothing but communication. And from today, Tilanka, I will add clarity as well, because I heard it from an experienced professional marketer. And D is you need to deal with people, right? You need to have that PR. You can't be the most unpopular person in the clan. And E, you should have energy. And energy is how you energize through communication again. So in simplifying the answer is you need to communicate with confidence and clarity.
Some wonderful opening thoughts from you as well, sir, there. And indeed, communication with clarity, communication with purpose. And as you very correctly said, you will be observing not the slides. The slides are not the deciding factor. It's the presenter. And I always believe that in a presentation, it's about the presenter. I mean, if you switch on your laptop and the slides are not functioning or some problem, I mean, of course, yes, Microsoft PowerPoint is a very reliable software. We are not questioning that at all. But what we're saying is that if by chance, Jitendra, we have to be very careful with the reference to software, isn't it, today? But if by chance there's a malfunction with the laptop or something, you still should be able to do the presentation. Am I right, sir?
Yes, certainly.
So moving on after those very important opening remarks from the two guests today, moving on to the second question for Ms. Tilanka. Tilanka, now, when as a leader, obviously there will be moments where you're looking for a team member, you're picking a team member. What are the essential aspects of communication that you would look for? Maybe you don't always tell them, look, I'm trying to observe this. Most of the time people go for interviews, they say, okay, we answered what they asked, but I still didn't get selected or something. It's probably because, we are very, even leaders, they most of the time they tell what was good, but they don't always tell what were they looking for that were not there. Time to spill the beans as a leader. What would be those the little intricacies or the little nitty-gritty of communication that you look for in a team member, whether it's to promote them, whether it's to hire for your team or whatever it may be?
Yeah. Thank you, Tarindu, for that question again. So I believe I think Mr. Jitendra also very detailed mentioned about the importance of the coordination and really knowing what you bring to the table. So I think maybe to start with an experience. Sometimes I see most of the time, not sometimes actually, probably most of the time, the candidates come prepared to say something. They have a pre-prepared. And it's important. I'm not saying you have to practice. I mean, obviously, any of us preparing for an interview, it's important. So they come very, very well prepared to say what, and actually they don't give proper attention to what is the question being asked. I think that is something that I've seen across the board, because the question is one thing, but they will answer, they will communicate what they already had in their mind. So that is because it's not that they are not good, or probably it's again a communication issue, because firstly you have to listen. I mean, what is that question? What's the background to that question? So I don't think there is enough attention given to the question, but instead they all are very interested in coming and saying, I'm so and so, I've done this, I have this degree. So I always, whenever I interview, I ask with the first question saying, so we have your CV, we know you. By the time when you come, we know your qualification, we know where you studied, where you work. Tell us what we don't see in your CV. So I think that is usually my question to everyone across the board, because whatever, irrespective of the title, I think that this is a generic question. But it is sometimes very surprising. Many people don't get this question right. That's because they come prepared either to come and offload, who am I? Come and offload and say, I'm so and so, so and so, I've done this, I've done that, I've done that. If not, they just completely get lost. What is this question? And, answer something completely irrelevant. So I think, Tarindu, the first point or the first thing is to, to stand out is to really listen, not what you practice. It's important, but that is your framework only. To listen. So someone who is a listener, good listener who understands the question right is one. And probably I'll add another point. Secondly, I think sometimes the candidates forget what the business wants. The candidate wants the job, but the business wants the candidate to perform something. I mean, technically speaking, for the business, it is the candidate that they want, but actually the business need here is to fulfill a particular, job description. Okay, so I think that is something sometimes the candidates fail or rather have not given proper thought into. So that again comes to the lot of practicing, but not bringing the real context at that time. So they completely forget the fact that even when you give them the opportunity to ask the question, what do you want to know from us? It's a valuable opportunity to ask 2-3 questions. What is what kind of objectives your company have, or whatever. I mean, the rest depends on the job that you apply. So I think in summary, the first point is listen. Someone who listens is something probably will stands out, who listens to the question and really brings the context. And the second thing is someone who understands what the business needs, not to come and say, this is who am I, and put yourself forward without really understanding what this company is trying to achieve, and not even take time to ask the question, what are you trying to achieve through this position? So I think I gave it a negative. I started with the things that they don't do, but naturally the ones who do that stands out. I hope I answered your question.
Absolutely, you did. And I think you took that very good example there as well, Tilanka. That was fantastic. Mr. Jitendra, moving on to the next question for you. Sir. In terms of the lack of fluency of language, because this is a big concern that a lot of people have. Maybe they are good in English, maybe they are good in their communication, but they're not fluent, even when they go to talk or when they go to present or when they go to speak at an event, they are not necessarily fluent. I mean, they might get stuck sometimes. Do you, I mean, what are your thoughts on this? A lot of people, they're actually scared to talk because of this lack of fluency. Exactly. So in your thoughts, in your experience, is the lack of fluency of the language a deal breaker? And what can young professionals do to improve their fluency?
Pertinent question, Tarindu. Thanks a lot for the person who had raised this question. I think it's like you having the driving license and the knowledge to drive, but if you don't know how to drive the vehicle, it's like not knowing the language, right? You might be the best person to travel. So lack of fluency will cripple communication, okay? Because that's the vehicle that will get from point A to point B. From the person who communicates, the stimulus of speaking or writing should get to the person receiver and create that response. And I've been saying these two words, DR. You need to always look at the desired result in the minds of the receiver, right? It can be a manager speaking to his boss, manager speaking to the board, sales person speaking to the client, right? If he doesn't know what the client wants, I think a few minutes back, Tilanka touched upon that point. Tilanka, I think your answer triggered me a train of thought when we interview, right? Especially this happens with the junior people. When we ask them to come and if we have 20 minutes, I think they waste few seconds saying, I'm so-and-so, right? We all know he's so-and-so because that's the name that the secretary would have called him into the meeting room, right? So there's no reason why he should waste that few minutes. And they might say things which are which will not market that person. So I'm getting back to the DR, desired response, right? And you need to respect the other person's time as well. So if the DR and the desired response, respect is taken care of, his sort of the desired outcome will be there, right? So getting back to fluency, I think I should highlight when you communicate, verbal or written, there are 3 elements which will create the being a accountant by profession. Let me use a accounting term, NPV. What is NPV? Net present value, right? In net present value communication, I use the 3 letters just to highlight another point. N is for non-verbal, right? P is for paraverbal, and V is verbal. Toastmasters here, I think Siva, I can see the VPPR of PIM Toastmasters. This might be echoing in your ears each time you visit a club, Toastmasters club, right? So we need to be aware of the NPV of communication. If I'm talking, the words that I use, right? And the paraverbal, the tone, pitch, and volume. And non-verbal, right? Your body language. Because everyone thinks that it's the word that pops out from somebody's mouth is the most important. No, that's about 10% of the communication package. Paraverbal, the tone, pitch. If you're happy, you will raise your voice. If you're sad, you will be quite soft, which is about 35%. And non-verbal is the most powerful, right? It's about 55%, because out of your sensory organs, the most powerful input organ is eyes, right? I mean, if you take the 5 sensory organs, it's about 80%, right? So therefore, the non-verbal element is very powerful. So body language, yes. But if you get into written, the verbal component will be the words that you write, right? And the paraverbal is the style, the tone. When you're writing to your board and when you're writing to your team, 2 different styles, right? And then when you're writing to a client, it will be totally different. Coming on to the non-verbal, the layout of the document, right? How the subheadings, the layout again, right? And it should be in a clean piece of paper, or your email should be properly aligned with proper justification. All those matters, because first impressions matter, right? We have heard from John Carlson, moments of truth. The first 10 to 15 seconds is very important in making that first impression, which will help immensely in getting that desired result sorted out, right? So coming back to what Tarindu asked me about 2-3 minutes back about fluency in language, right? So if you are not fluent in the language, right, your verbal component or the words that you write will be greatly it will hinder the progress of your desired result, right? Progress towards your desired result. So how can somebody improve? I've been always talking about you can improve with your 4 sensory organs, with 4 sensory organs out of 5, right? You can listen to good language. In this instance, Tarindu, let me take English as an example. You need to listen to the best English, right? Spoken by a very eloquent, fluent person, right? And you should be able to speak as well, right? You should speak, right? You should never be feeling shy. I have always comparing. It's like the days that we learned to how to ride a bicycle, right? How many times have we fallen, right? So learning a language, how many times have we gone wrong? You should always pluck your courage, stand up and start writing or speaking again. Then you should read the best English possible, right? And I will give the one example of a best particular source. I'm not promoting that particular source. And then you need to write, right? So listening, speaking, reading, and writing, right, will mold your fluency, right? And what is the best source which I can recommend right now, which is available in most of the reputed libraries, including PIM, is The Economist magazine. It comes from Britain, right? And it is available online, right? Few articles comes free of charge. And most of all, there is a what you call a webcast, right? Which is a podcast, which daily will give you 20 to 30 minutes of, it is all free. I mean, it's available, app is available, where you can listen to the best English, right? And on Mondays, they read out, Tarindu, 3 articles from that particular week's issue, right? So that, I would say, is the best way to learn English, right? Listen, speak, read, or write, right? I just took English as an example. This will be applicable for any language. Hope I did justice to your query, Tarindu, and to the
Absolutely, sir. As always, indeed, and as you very correctly said, I guess what you're also trying to say there is that no matter how bad you think you are in your fluency, with every effort, with every attempt, you keep getting better, isn't it? I think that's the main learning outcome there. With every effort, you have to keep getting better, and I guess that's the main learning from that. Thank you very much, Mr. Jitendra, for those encouraging words for all our participants today. Moving on to Tilanka. Tilanka, now let's talk about crisis communication, because nowadays with a smartphone on the hands of almost now easily more than half of the population, and if you take a country like Sri Lanka, I think more than the population, I think our mobile penetration is around 140%, if I'm not mistaken. So clearly, for even a small act, a small error can get recorded on a mobile phone and get released out on social media, internet. I mean, every second, every moment, every interaction is a possible crisis, and a crisis waiting to explode. Now, when a company is hit with a crisis, it can be that some customers have got together and put a video out blasting that company. It can be something that a particular group of consumers have experienced, especially we saw with regard to these gas incidents and so on. And my question is, when the crisis hit, I don't think it's ever a question of if a crisis will hit, because all companies at some point will face it. So let's rephrase and reterm it as, when a crisis hits, what are the vital areas to look at? In other words, what is your crisis communication 101 in your perspective?
Yes. Okay. Thanks, Tarindu. I think, as you very rightfully said, in the recent past, we've seen a lot of such, as consumers or as general public, we've seen a lot of such crises being faced by organizations. So I think a few things, because I'm taking a very experience-based approach here. So I think number one, I would believe in the modern day, because whether a crisis gets escalated to a crisis point 2.0, 2.2, 3, 4 is really in the hands of the organization. Because as you very rightfully said, in the analog age, or the era before the smartphones, something that would have been, people would have never known, or something that they would have only known after 1 week or 2 weeks, when the bus has already been missed. Now you will know in the next minute. Everyone has the smartphones in their hand, and so you are actually, I think as individuals or even as organizations, we always have to, first thing I think is, you always need to acknowledge this reality. You are always being watched, like it or not, as an individual or even as a public figure or even as an organization. I think it's so important that you are being watched as a brand. That is always happening. So I think that's point number one. And number two is, I think I've always mentioned this even at the forums that I talk to our marketers through the Slim, and that is now our consumers, customers are holding brands to very high purpose, and that actually accelerated, or rather that need further elevated during the pandemic, because people want to have brands which has a higher purpose, not the ones who will throw them 50% off, 40%. Not that the discounts aren't important, discounts are important, but they won't stick with them. So if you went for a 40% to someone, the next time you will go to someone who is offering 70%. But when you give them something that they can, a purpose that you can stand with, a purpose that you can support, your brand communication or your brand becomes a different engagement. Your consumer and customers relationship with the brand becomes a very stronger affiliation than the normal one. So in a situation like this, I think the brand really needs to honor this purpose that you put forward. I think when you don't do that, it becomes a crisis. Because for an example, if you are promising something in your brand promise, and if you do something completely different, that creates a crisis. But I think before handling the crisis, I think as a company, you need to have set of SOPs or whatever you call it, like a playbook, or you can call whatever that your organization calls, but there should be a certain set of do's and don'ts to prevent a crisis, mainly by deviating from what you promised your customer. I'm not going to throw examples because I think you have seen, but when there is a brand that you trust a lot, and suddenly when they do something, that's why the attack on that brand is much severe than something else, because the consumers have had so much love and respect for the brand, which is suddenly gone, which hurts them so much. So I think the second point I'd like, so the first one being, you have to always know that you're being watched, and people are listening to what you do and what you stand for. The second thing is to have, your organization should also have very strict measures the things that you should do and you should not. I mean, if you have a particular purpose that I'm going to do that, there should be a certain way that you do things. Are you going to really, I mean, even before a product, I'll tell you for an example, even before a product is ready, are you going to go and say that it's ready and, let the customers wait in a queue? Are you going to use the word like free and thereafter, you come and actually don't offer things free, examples like that. So the second thing is to really have that guidebook ready so that you leave or you reduce the room for a crisis to take place. Then it comes to the point where you said it has taken place. Now what you do? I think there are only you again need as an organization, I think especially for corporate communications professionals, leaders, they need to really do this the same way you do a forecasting for your business. You also need to see all scenarios as much as possible. Where can things go wrong? Right? I mean, if you're in your business and if you know your organization, not 100%, but at least to a certain extent, you can say what kind of things can go wrong and what can actually go wrong and elevate into a crisis. So you should really have should be a strategy to address or face this crisis. So you have a crisis management plan, but there is again a percentage, as you very rightfully said, something that was done with the genuine interest, something that was done without any, probably something that only meant for good backfiring on you, or someone saying something that is totally, so unfortunate, I would say. Something that was totally unplanned can also take place. So in a situation like that, you won't know what to do, because I think the first 3 points I said are all manageable. So you have a strategy that leads up to a crisis management plan that you have in place. But the fourth one being when you are completely out of control, you don't know, I mean, this has taken place. I think where sometimes the companies that go wrong is, you ask crisis 101, I think you should not, how do I say, like either attack the attacker or try to confront them in a way that aggravates the problem. I think the most important thing is take a step back and really look at the sentiments of the group who is, I mean, if you think of a social media engagement, you say that you're attacking a brand. So you really take a step back and look at the crisis, the situation, and assess. I mean, timing is important. Obviously, you have to react faster. But when you try to react faster without giving thought, it's a much bigger disaster. So it's so important to take a step back, look at assess, and also see the party who is, or the group, or it can be a pressure group, or whoever is doing it. Try to understand where their shoes and understand what is actually going wrong. Maybe at a glance, the company might think this is so unfair. We have done so much good to the country, and they're attacking us. Why are we being attacked? But that's not the way to approach in a crisis. You have to always turn the tables and think what is really they want, and address the crisis from that perspective, not from the organizational perspective, from the crisis and the relevant stakeholders perspective. If not, if you really look at it from the organization's perspective, it's going to be very challenging. And also there can be situations, if you're not very sure what your answer is going to be, go with a standard response. It's way better than taking a call and not being able to, answer the question, and that call being recorded and, going all over the place saying this person doesn't know what he spoke about, or, things like that. So there should always be a standard, in communication, you sometimes say there are cues that people can ask a different question, but there are ways that you anchor on it and always keep going back to a different answer. I think that is for a different day. You can even, there are lots of examples. Tarindu, you might ask a question, but I can, always, I think in Sinhala, people say, this Mecca story, that's the best example. You always know where to anchor and keep coming back to the same place. So that is also a strategy which the spokespersonal of the organization should be trained. They should be trained well ahead so that they actually know. I think you all know in Sinhala, the folklore, there's this Mecca story. That means whatever that the essay says, keeps talking about that. So that means you should know when you are in a bit of a, sometimes how to handle with it. So you have a standard answer. You have a standard answer that you need more time. The standard answer has to be something solid that says, at the moment, this is all I have, but let me get back to you. So, I mean, as much as someone pressures, you can say, I'm sorry, I need more time. I have to get back to you. Like that, you have to have a standard answer as well in a deep crisis situation where instead of you trying to throw things, I think we have seen a lot of such things, right? I mean, when you don't know and you just go in front of camera and say things, and that will haunt you forever. So that's one. And I think the final point I'd like to add is authentic communication in a crisis is so important. I think in a crisis, if you try to show that you're trying to sugarcoat it, or either, try to, put like a synthetic cover on it and say, no, this is not what it is, this is the reality, I think you're asking for more trouble. I think sometimes your consumers and customers might respect you more for acknowledging and saying sorry than trying to come and say, no, why are you telling us this way? And we have done so much 25 years back. Why are you attacking us today? We support community. All of that becomes irrelevant in that crisis. So you sometimes saying sorry might be your best answer. So I think I just mentioned like 5 things. So first 4 was more about preventing and have a communication, so crisis communication strategy. And the last two actually were about really, one thing is to have a standard answer. It's so important, especially the people who face media, the people who face your organization, whoever who gets the call, whoever who answers the social media, to have a standard something, at least to say, give us some time, we are evaluating the situation, like that, something standard, which is neutral, which doesn't get an attack. And lastly is that, as what I said, authenticity. You have to really make that decision. Sometimes acknowledging and saying sorry could be your best response. So sorry, I took a little time, but I hope I tried to explain. Yeah.
I mean, crisis. I mean, some of the nitty-gritty of it, how you anchor on a particular point, how you rather than trying to say or trying to cover up where you admit your mistake, admit your error, and then you tell them what you're planning to do and what you're going to do. Something like that can have a much bigger impact, a more positive impact. So I think some very valid points and thoughts there shared by you. Thank you very much for that. I would like to move on to Mr. Jitendra. Mr. Jitendra, now when approaching a business presentation, a lot of our young students, our young learning partners, they basically would be having to do a lot of presentations on a very regular basis, and maybe sometimes more than a PIM presentation. It might be scary for them to do a presentation for, let's say, their corporate board or their corporate leadership. What is your checklist when someone is approaching a presentation? What would the checklist be?
Yeah, I think my checklist is 2 points. One is how to deliver and what to deliver. If you are an expert in knowing what to deliver, and if you don't know how to deliver, it's a failure, major failure. Vice versa, if you don't know how to deliver, and if you know how to deliver, and if you don't have the relevant content, it's again failure. So you need to know how to deliver, how to control yourself when delivering, right? I think most of the people, at the moment you are told that you need to do a presentation, they suffer from a sickness called glossophobia. Glossophobia is fear of public speaking, right? So that is one element which you need to practice and get over, right? There are so many institutions where this practice can be achieved in a very professional way, because I know Toastmasters is where leaders are made, right? Leaders are communicators. So therefore, one place where you can get over that particular weakness. And what to deliver is basically you need to have the 4S model, right? You need to have your speech ready. Then you need to have principle down. The principal medium of visual delivery is slides. So you need to have the second is slides ready. Then you need to have the speaker ready. That is you, right? So in earlier point which I mentioned, how to deliver. You need to know how to control your nervousness, because there is in our body a hormone called adrenaline, right? Which is a fight or flight hormone. The moment people are affected by glossophobia or public speaking, fear of public speaking, there will be loads of adrenaline loaded to your system. So you need to control that, right? And there are various techniques, which is not the time to discuss that. But, and the last thing is how to control the stage, right? And most of the instances now where we speak is the online platform. So you need to know how to manage the online platform, how to manage your virtual background, how to increase stability, how to have the body language expressed in an online platform where at least bust up is shown, because your the body language elements should be shown. So if you know how to deliver and what to deliver, Tariq, I think the job will be achieved very successfully.
Thank you very much, Jitendra, for that very simplified checklist of what needs to be looked at. And I think, as you very correctly said, so in a fight or flight situation, please do stay and fight, because you will only keep on getting better at it and a better fighter. Thank you for those sentiments. I would now also like to open the forum for questions from our participants. If there are any questions that they would like to raise, this would be the opportunity. I would like to, in the meantime, share one question which we received once again before the start of the program. Give me a quick split second of a time. Meanwhile, okay, we have a question for Ms. Tilanka that has come in. Tilanka, the question is that when it comes to communication, now you are into marketing. This is probably coming from a marketing graduate or a marketing student. Now you are into marketing, but beyond the traditional advertising and promotion related communication, how does good corporate communication help to have deeper customer conversations? I think goes very well in line with your experience and your areas you're passionate as well. So beyond the normal advertising, how does proper corporate communication help us to have deeper customer conversations?
Right. Okay. So I think that's where, Tarindu, the corporate, your organization's corporate communication strategy becomes so important. So I think so the last line of what is this is a customer conversations, right? That it leads to customer conversations. Am I right?
Correct. Deeper customer
conversations. Yes. So I think the corporate communications, where it stands different to the regular, I think, advertising and the advertising campaigns is there is a specific advertising is always known as promoted, and there is a particular purpose. There is an objective for that campaign, either to generate leads, to increase your market share. There is a particular business outcome that is expected out of a campaign. But the difference of corporate communications is your organization, that is your organization's reputation that you're managing through that strategy. So in doing that, so before coming into the customer relationships, I think your organization's identity, I think as a marketer, if you're really into the corporate communications, is the area that you focus on. I think this is no time for a whole marketing strategy, because the marketing strategy doesn't start there. It has to start from your positioning and understanding audience and the position. And, there's a long journey. So I'm just only going to focus on the corporate communication strategy, assuming that everything else has been done. So in that communications, so the corporate communication strategy, the purpose of your organization becomes so important, the purpose. So I think as a brand, usually as a marketer myself, so representing Slim today, so even in I would say that in the intricate of brand excellence that I think you all know, that the Brand Excellence Awards, Professor Udit Liyanage himself, I think you all know Professor Udit himself put that criteria together. He's asking a very important question, that is, if your brand doesn't exist tomorrow, what will your consumers miss? It's just 2 lines, but it basically boils down the whole thing that we are supposed to do as marketers. If your brand doesn't exist tomorrow, what will your consumers miss? So you think of your whole strategy about what is that, what are you building? What is that relationship that you're building with your consumer or your customer? So I think even in the corporate communications, once you have done all of that, so as a brand that you know what your purpose is, that you have put together a purpose, that corporate communication strategy should really strengthen from one for the organization. What is that reputation that I want to project in my customers' mindset? Is it the serious market leader, or is it the young and vibrant, fun, cool type character, or is it the mature, like the mature father figure or mature motherly figure, whatever that you come up with, and your corporate communication strategy should reflect that. So that strategy should really, the kind of content that you bring about and all that has to complement that purpose that you have put together for your brand. That's the most important thing, because that's the main difference between an advertising campaign. The advertising campaigns are also governed by the purpose. I mean, don't get me wrong. The brand purpose and the mission doesn't change. But usually the campaigns might have a different focus. But the corporate communications related is not just a campaign. It's a way of life. It's how you do business. It's how you do your internal communications to your employees. It is how your leaders speak in public. It is how your organization is projected in the society. So all these pieces have to be strategized. So you might have to pick who are your spokesperson. Is it your CEO? Is it your director board? Maybe you might pick, these are our key spokespersonal, and maybe they pick different topics to stand for. So as CEO, this is what I'm going to focus on. As the GM for so and so. So like that, your spokespersonal have to complement that. And also your organizational communication strategy again needs to have, as I mentioned earlier, what is that reflection or what is that image reputation that I'm creating in the society or the public or whoever your audience. I'm talking in general because we are not talking about a particular case study. And then the other thing is everything that you do. For an example, if your brand purpose or if your brand's positioning is a senior, imagine I'll tell you a simple example. Say if your brand is a mature fatherly figure brand in your consumer's mind, and imagine you coming and doing something totally opposite in the corporate communications. Imagine the conflict there. So I think that's why your corporate communication strategy has to reflect what you stand for and have that content also to go with it. It doesn't matter that your neighbor can be a different cool and fun brand and you are a different, but you stand for your values and you don't try to compete on a different setting where you lose the game. So you need to really understand your footing, and that corporate communications, that's where the difference is. You really need to understand that purpose and operationalize it into a corporate communication strategy that finally defines how your consumer sees you.
I think we lost Ms. Tilanka just for a very short while. Mr. Jitendra, I believe you are there still with us?
Yes.
Right.
Very much there.
So I think until we have Ms. Tilanka back online with us, I would like to, I think she was making a very valid point, and we will give her time to complete the thoughts she was sharing. We have a question from Ms. Marutai Ravindran, Mr. Marutai Ravindran, who is, I believe, one of our students as well. The question is, what are the main paradigm shifts that you see in employee communication today? What are the main paradigm shifts that you see?
Yes, I think one shift is since March 2020, we have moved out from, most of the time, we have moved out from the in-person communication where we speak to somebody in front of us. It could be a meeting, it could be a discussion, whatever, one-to-one also, to an online situation, right? I think that is a paradigm shift in communication, which we need to embrace, right? And the online techniques, how to manage Zoom, Teams, Webex, or whatever the platforms. The other thing is the language, right? Because something I think connected to one of the earlier questions on fluency, right? I always believe the message should reach the recipient, right? So if it has the necessary orientation, it will go there, right? And taking a cue from technology, it is like GPS, right? You need to have the proper GPS if you want to go from GPS direction if you want to go from point A to B, the navigation. Similarly, language also has a set of GPS, right? The grammar, the pronunciation or punctuation, and spelling, the style of writing, and the selection of words, right? Now, technology, Tarindu and Ravi, who raised this question, has given us so many helpful tools to be perfect in the GPS. But at the same time, we need to understand that the human being is far more superior to the technology, and we should always do a proofreading as well. And I would love if the chief marketing lead of Microsoft Sri Lanka was here, because it is sometimes your Microsoft spell checker can let you down, right? And I've been sharing, yes, the chief marketing lead of Microsoft is here. Tilaka was just explaining a couple of seconds back how technical, I mean, somebody asked about the paradigm shifts. In one is okay from in-person communication to online communication. And the second is use of GPS, which is grammar, punctuation, pronunciation, spelling, selection of words, and style. And with regard to spelling, we are totally dependent on the spell checker given by Mr. Bill Gates, right? And sometimes I have one real life example where somebody wanted to spell inconvenience, and what came out was incontinence, right? And a message was sent to all staff early in the morning, sorry for the incontinence. So you should not, even though Ravi and Tarindu and rest of the people in the forum, even though technology is there, that's a new paradigm shift. We need to embrace technology. Always we need to be aware that the human mind, human skill is much, much more superior, and we should always keep tab on the technology. Hope I answered that query, Ravi and Tarindu.
Thank you.
I believe Tilanka is back again with us. Tilanka, you can just complete your answer. I believe you were sharing some important thoughts there.
Sorry,
also, maybe if you could,
yeah.
No, and also if you could touch upon this question raised by one of our foreign students about the how to be a good communicator in a multicultural workplace. That's all. You deal with the multicultural background. 9 different countries, 9 completely different cultures, and sometimes subcultures also. How do you really deal with that? So you can come to that after you complete the answer for the earlier question you were sharing with us.
Okay. Thank you. I think, sorry, I got interrupted, but I think I was concluding. So I think, I hope I pretty much covered what I wanted to say. So I think as the corporate communication strategy, coming to the previous question, it is all about having that strategy that you actually can define what is that image that you're going to create in your customers and consumers' mind, which is going to in return, what is the relationship, the kind of engagement they're going to have, it all will depend on that. So then once you establish that, then you have to protect it, and so on. There is no end to it. You will just continue. So I think that's where I was getting at. So I believe that concludes it. So the multicultural setting. So let me speak as an employee here. So yes, personal experience front. So dealing with multicultures and multiple time zones and different genders, and the way there are different cultures. I think the first word that comes to my mind is you have to be respectful of that diversity. So I think the first thing that we do is you ask, you proactively ask. I mean, for an example, if you're working with New Zealand, it's hardly you can find a time that is not too early for them, or too late for us. So like that. So I think it's always important when you are working on a multicultural setting, you have to be respectful for who is at the other end, and for their culture, and for what their expectations are and their working hours. So as an employee myself, I know we are really respectful of this, and always we proactively ask questions before any of these to understand. For an example, if you do something in Bangladesh, you have to ask proactively. You cannot assume, that just because something worked in Sri Lanka, it is going to work in Bangladesh. No, it is not the case. So you can always bring in a best case, how do I say, like a success, best case scenario, or like a success story from another country, but it doesn't mean you can, take it like this and fit in another country. So you have to always be respectful, ask the questions, ask a lot of questions actually. Ask what is their audience, what do they expect, what is what kind of traditions do they have, and have clarity again. And then thereafter, I think you can together come up with maybe communications, maybe marketing, whatever it is, you come up with that. So I think working in a multicultural setting, the most important thing is you have to really have diversity and inclusion at the heart of everything you do, respect diversity. And that's why I think we always say that diversity is like inviting to the party. Inclusion is actually inviting that person to dance. So you can invite someone to the party and completely ignore that person. You are invited to the ball, but no one is inviting you to the dance. But when you are in diversity is the variety and the diversity that you have, you are being in that audience with diversity. But inclusion is really make sure they are given the voice to hear and get that understanding. So I think in a multicultural setting, to sum it up, I think you have to be respectful. You can't assume things. You cannot really assume things, and ask a lot of questions and clarify, and always come to mutual understanding. I think that with that way, you can work anywhere and, with any culture.
Thank you very much, Tilanka. And Mr. Jitendra, to sum up, I think I can share one question with you, sir. Yeah. How effective communication will basically be benefiting to a professional practitioner who is working in a politically driven organization where there is very careful freedom of expression. I think it's a very situation specific, case specific question. In a politically driven organization, maybe like a government related organization also, where there is careful freedom of expression, how do you think that how effective communications can benefit a professional?
Of course, because I'm repeating something which I said about 45 minutes ago. You need to be aware of the desired result, right? And if the desired result is not to upset and for you to be politically correct, right? So you need to get your GPS right? More than the grammar, punctuation, and pronunciation, spelling, you need to have the proper selection of words and the style right? So I would define those will weigh more into the formula or the formula of effective communication in a politically driven organization, because your survival will be dependent on how effectively you communicate without hurting feelings. At the same time, if you're a professional, I think the question had the word professional. You need to be a professional, right? You need to do the right thing, right? Irrespective of any particular affiliation to a political party or the driving force. So you need to know how best you can convey the message. So that's where the selection of words come. Where you need to, I'm using a word from the pharmaceutical industry, you need to sugarcoat a bitter pill, right? So if it's a breakdown of ethical principles, most of the professional institutes, Tilanka will know, and the institutes attached also have been very actively educate the students as well as the professionals how best you need to guard the ethical standards, right? So therefore, communication matters hell of a lot in a situation like that, where you need to give a guarded reply.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jitendra, for those wonderful thoughts and addressing a very pertinent question. I hope the person who raised the question got the. So with that, I believe it is time to conclude this month's PIM Monthly Montage. I'm extremely honored to have hosted two veterans of communication, experts in the field of corporate and business communication, Mr. Jitendra Gunatilaka, Head of Compliance for LOSC Finance, and Ms. Tilanka Bevadana, the CMO lead for Microsoft Southeast Asia and Emerging Markets, as well as the President of Sri Lanka Institute of Marketing. PIM continues to look at ways of collaborating and bringing out the best knowledge using the ideal combination of our own elite internal resources as well as external resource experts who can share a wealth of knowledge and groom and mentor our students and also the wider business community to be the type of business leaders that our country deserves and our country needs. Thank you very much, Tilanka and Mr. Jitendra Guntilaka for having joined us today. Wishing both of you all the very best for the month ahead and also for the incoming new month. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks a lot for having me in this program. And I would like to thank Director PIM and the staff for this wonderful idea of having a knowledge sharing on an online platform. Thank you.
Thank you, Tarindu. Thanks for the invitation. And it was an enriching discussion, Mr. Jitendra. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks. Same here. Bye.
Thank you very much. And also a big thank you out to the tech team who today the host of this meeting is Mr. Prabhash Vikramasinghe, who was looking into all the nitty-gritty of it. And also to all our participants who, despite all their work, busy schedules, joining us from multiple different geographies. In fact, thank you for being with us. I hope this was a rewarding and a very value-adding 1 hour discussion for you as well. And with that, we wrap up this month's PIM monthly montage. I'm Tarindu Amarasekara, and stay safe and have a successful month ahead. And we will see you soon with the PIM monthly montage number 15 of this entire series in the month of March. Thank you very much, and everybody stay safe and good night.